Hello, everybody. This is the standard KubeAVM office hours. It is Halloween. Happy Halloween to everybody. And we have several things to discuss. So let's start it off here. Kenneth, did you want to discuss issue number 1189?
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
All right. This is just something I observed when trying to join a worker node with KubeADM on a node that did not have a default route, and discovered the very reasonable and useful API server bind address verification that had been added. However, it didn't seem applicable for the worker node. And so I was wondering if that made sense to go ahead and special case the places that needed to be handled so that a worker node could join without a bind address.
Kenneth, you explained the reasoning behind not having a default route for your worker node.
Correct.
So, can you elaborate about this security scenario that you have?
Well, it's just a matter of some nodes that are in a physical system that are only routed internally, like let's say over InfiniBand or something, and they may have a couple of other routes to other things like management nodes, but they don't have default route out to the internet or any other general networks.
So you can always present this via Etsy host and having an override. So there's been like weird combinations that people have had over time. I think the most amazing one that I ever saw was an IPv4 route over loopback, which was IPv4 over IPv6 loopback address creation. And you can update your Etsy hosts or have some type of override there. So you need some address to be able to hit the API server. So I'm curious, what's your...
So there are routes for interfaces which will connect us to the API server or to a proxy, load balancer for it, but it's just not set up as default because the workloads and things that will be running, we don't want to be able to send traffic out. And of course, then there's network policies and things to deal with all that. But the idea is just that these nodes are very particularly configured. And to the point, I guess, is whether that check would be valid on a worker node in any case.
Yeah, we depend on a certain check that is in API machinery, and the check basically goes in your networking interface, and it checks if you have a default route. And we are doing this on worker nodes that, basically on worker nodes that are not control plane nodes.
So I would definitely put this as a feature, not a bug. This is by design currently. I'm not opposed to modifying it, but I'm curious as to what or how you want to modify here.
We have to make a number of modifications. The second to last post in that tracking issue, I listed all the code changes that we have to do, because currently, due to the change that Fabrizio did with introducing the joint control plane workflow, we now have coupled these routing checks deeply into our code.
Yeah, I'm not opposed to this. I definitely do not consider this. This is definitely a feature, and it's not a bug by design, at least currently. And if folks want to work on it, I'm not opposed to working on it for 114. 113, we are already in lockdown, or we're going to be nearing lockdown for feature freeze next week, Friday. So there's pretty much no way, given their current backlog, which we'll talk about in a little bit later, that we'll be able to address this. But I'm not opposed to folks working on it if they want to. I don't think it'll be a higher priority item for the SIG as a whole, unless
Sure.
other people want to step up to work on this.
Yeah. So would there be any chance of getting into 113 if merge requests were available, just presented? Meaning if, say, iPrudent was able to contribute a merge request?
We'd happily get it for 114, for sure.
Okay.
I think given our current backlog, which I'll go through in just a second at the end, is that 113 is very tight and we still have a ton of work to do. And given the current state and the potential disruption this could have on critical path flow of operation, I'd be a little remiss on making this change unless it was very minute.
Sure. Great.
Does that seem fair?
Yeah, thanks for clarifying on that.
Okay. Next up on the agenda is Fabrizio here. He is not. So he had a PR, like we've done a lot of work with the rearrangement to promote for GA to get the phases work out of init. Now I've seen most of the phases work shuffle over to init. The question I have, and I don't know who's been syncing with Fabrizio. Oh, he's there. Fabrizio, you're here.
Hi all. Sorry for the delay.
No worries. I'm glad you're here. So I just went through 70333 a little while ago, which is like get rid of alpha phases and just have the alpha subcommand. The question I have is the kubelet portions of alpha. Are you planning, or are we planning to execute to get phases for join in this cycle? Because a lot of those, some of those sub-elements for the kubelet pretty much belong as join phases.
Let me start the video. Okay, so no, we are not planning to have phases for join this cycle. So this is not in scope. Why we have, but in the past when implementing, someone implemented under phases part of the join workflow. What I'm doing now is I'm simply moving under alpha, and then we will decide if to keep or delete.
Yeah, so more specifically, the one that I'm looking at, and I'm fine with this one here. Basically the downloading and the other operations. So long as we open up a tracking issue for doing join phases in the future, right? Because people will want that behavior as well, right?
Currently, there are two phases. There are two actions under alpha that belongs to the init workflow. One is download, and the other is pre-flight check.
I saw that too, yeah.
So we can keep and open an issue. We can decide to simply remove this action under alpha. I don't see them as really useful, because you can do basically nothing without all the other steps.
They can be. You can still. You can, but it's not really useful.
Yes.
Is Liz on? I like getting Liz's hot take on sort of.
Here. What did I do?
No, I like getting your hot take on user workflow. So there's, the work to shuffle all the stuff to from initially alpha phases to move to init, right? So init, whatever. All right. There are a couple of things that still remain in alpha, which are these weird split things that exist across both init and join, right? One of which is pre-flight checks. The question is, should we still maintain those as user-facing alpha subcommands? I think the answer, right now is it's fine.
I think there's definitely value in being able to run pre-flight checks as a discrete thing, because you could imagine running the pre-flight checks as part of a checklist before you actually commit to doing an upgrade.
Yeah, same with download config. I can imagine you wanting to do a preparatory work for download config as a separate step.
Yeah, I think of it like the Terraform plan versus the Terraform apply thing, which I really like.
So I guess with that in mind, with that question answered, I think it's fine, your current alpha change on 70333. And we should probably open a tracking issue for 114 to promote join and to probably suss out where we want these other co-mingled phases to land.
Okay, I will open an issue.
Yeah, we had a discussion with Fabrizio about the potential for join phases, and we decided privately that this is for the next cycle.
That's fine. I didn't see any work going on with it. So I wanted.
It was not decided, but that it is for the next cycle, but it was not decided that it is for this cycle. So no one is working on.
We are getting close to the deadline, and that it's totally fine with me at this stage, so long as we finish off any reducing the backlog, because it's not a requirement that we've kind of made or stated. Init phases and the dedupe out of alpha for most of those things is I've seen a lot of the things going through and they look good. So I think users will be happy. I'm happy with the changes. I think as long as we track for next cycle for the join workflow, that will also be useful.
Yeah, we basically decided for the future. Sorry, Fabrizio, we didn't decide for next cycle. It was for the future.
Yeah.
Yes.
Right.
I have since we are talking about objective for this cycle, we discussed quickly in Slack about graduating the join control plane workflow included stacked TCD. So basically removing the experimental prefix.
I don't think we should. I think we should leave it experimental for this cycle until we answer the certs problem with either your proposal or mine. I think it should still be experimental. I think we should definitely update the instructions for the HA deployment, but I would be remiss on, because people ask about that question all the time, I would like it to be promoted when we've answered that final question. What are your thoughts there?
I agree that the story is not completed without the cert moving. From the other side, I would like to have more user feedback on this, and until we keep this hidden, we are not receiving feedback. So might be that adding this to the documentation with all the disclaimer will trigger some test from the user. So I agree with your proposal in the end.
I mean, we could, because if we quarantine the certs copying as an option, as a separate step, right, is an opt-in step. So people can use existing tools for, if they're Ansible based, they can do their SSH copy that way. Then we could promote and update documentation and still add the new option in the future too, and then just call it out in the documentation.
Honestly, I don't think that we should start implementing the cert moving now, because we have two efforts which are rolling but not yet completed.
No, I know that. I'm not recommending doing that change. What I'm stating is that we could still have at promote control plane join. There's two options. One is hold on promoting from experimental. The other is to promote control plane join, but just call out right now that, in the future, like open an issue that in the future, we already have the issue open, I guess, that this should be a parameter as part of control plane join. I guess that doesn't work, does it? Control plane join is or control plane minus control plane is a subcommand of join.
I mean, we can have another flag in there. It's not a problem. I mean, dash control plane and also dash like copy search, I guess.
Chuck, how do you feel about updating the documentation to call out, and Ruben, to call out and vet the current workflow with everything except calling out experimental as part of the default configuration recommendation from the docs?
Wait, could you repeat that last bit?
So the docs currently are the old path,
Yep.
right? How would you feel? We could add a sub element. We could basically say like, this is the experimental road.
I think they do use experimental, or
I didn't see.
so. At least for external.
It says it says run the add the flag
Right.
is from, yeah.
Right.
Fabrizio, what do you think about moving control plane as a subcommand to join?
Sorry, I didn't catch.
What do you think about moving control plane as a subcommand to join, instead of having the experimental control plane as a flag to join?
But this is a part of the join workflow, so it is not another workflow.
So given that we already have the documentation, the reason why I didn't see it on first pass was because it's buried in that long command line.
Yep.
So the documentation is there. We should be getting user feedback directly if there's an issue. I think I'm fine with leaving it for this cycle and promoting it next. The docs are updated. They do reference. People should be using it. And then we can answer the certs problem and whether or not we want to have a separate subcommand for it, or if it should, because are we going to add flags around some of this stuff or not?
The problem with the flags and subcommands is that when we introduce them and we promote kubeadm to GA, we have to apply a deprecation cycle to them. So experimental control plane, if we release kubeadm with this command, we have to keep it until it's deprecated and removed. So my suggestion here was to, if we're going to use control plane as a flag, we can add basically in the description that this is experimental, and not use experimental as part of the name.
Well, then we'd have to update the docs. The problem is the consistency across the components inside of Kubernetes. Kubernetes this is already standard practice inside of Kubernetes. If you look at the kubelet, for example, which has literally hundreds of flags, this is standard operating procedures to add an experimental as a command line argument.
So it has to be like experimental for at least one cycle, I guess.
I think I'm fine with holding. I think we need to suss out how we want to deal with this, and I have not really thought about it too much.
Okay, this is not a big change here. So something to be reviewed on upgrade. We can also decide in the last moment, but no problem. I have one question, but we are going GA this cycle or not?
Yes.
Okay.
So before I get into the 113 whole backlog list, are there any other questions, comments, complaints folks wanted to discuss today? Yes, no, maybe so. All right, cool. So let's get into 113. Other than maybe like, I hate the tests and testing infrastructure. I could go on that for a long time. We should probably try, for several cycles, I've been wanting to address that issue. And I think until we get an actual, I think another gating feature too for control plane join to be promoted is we should have a full set of tests in place that actually deploys an HA cluster. So now with that in mind, I think that's probably totally prudent for us to not promote at this time.
That makes sense.
So going through 113 list, I've gone through, like Lubomir and myself went last week, we kind of divvied up a set of cleanup work to do. And one of the cleanup things that I had done was to go through the entire 113 milestone list and try to do a quick pass triage. I've done that. Everything's been labeled. Most things are assigned. I don't know if anyone has any questions, comments, complaints. What I'm going to do probably at the end of this week is anything that is purely a feature that we know cannot be accomplished by the end of next week, I will probably punt, depending upon whether or not some things are like feature bugs. They really are, like there's actually a bug in the code, but in order to fix that bug, you really need to modify or add a feature. But from what I see currently, the current list is about 55 open items. It's pretty high for this stage of the game. I don't know if other folks have had a chance to look through it. Some of them are tracking issues, where it's basically like we need to work with other SIGs to get these other things done. If folks can have a chance to look through this list before the next meeting, that would be super helpful. And if you feel like you want to boot things out of this milestone, feel free to talk about it. Anything that's kind of a bug, we can potentially boot, as long as it's not a higher priority bug. If it affects a lot less users and it's kind of a niche case. I know that Ruben and I went through kind of a very niche case that exists. There's definitely a bug in command line override options for certain scenarios on like a kubelet join. For example, the kubelet join will prefer the config that it download versus some of the command line overrides. But that's kind of a weird scenario that they encountered. So because it doesn't affect as many people, I'm happy to punt those things out of the 113 cycle. Are there issues or questions that folks have about the list that's currently there?
I mean, we can also reserve time eventually to go through all of them. Like,
I actually have time today. Today is actually a great day for me. So I can actually, if folks want to go through this in detail, maybe even after this meeting, I can set up a separate Zoom to walk through the list. Today's my best day for meetings.
possibly after the Quester API meeting.
Sure, that'll work too.
Okay.
I did have a question about how are the last stages of the phase shuffling work going? How many more PRs do we currently have left to do? Fabrizio.
Sorry.
How many more items do we have left for the phase shuffling, the phase/init shuffle work?
We are crossing the half of the phases, but I think that now we will go faster.
Okay, we technically have, because this work is this weird type of, it's not net new things, it's more of a shuffle or cleanup. We can probably be legit in spanning into past code slush, right? So I'm okay with that. We're kind of stretching the limits of that statement of what code slush is, but I'm okay with that.
Yeah, because it's like it's kind of refactor in a way. It's refactoring.
It is refactoring. I need to do a full audit one of these days too. Hopefully once we have most of the work done. So I will probably set up time and a walkthrough with Ruben. And if other folks want to join too, like literally go through and audit the commands to make sure that we are, everything is kosher, and ask all the thorny questions of what happens when you actually combine option A and option B for the new subcommand as they've switched and floated around.
Yeah, there is only one topic that was raised yesterday when reviewing one of the PR and Q, is that probably we need to decide how to handle flags for phases. Because the current approach is really simple, so all the phases are getting all the flags that the Kubernetes init has. But we are finding two possible change to this logic. One is that some phases need a flag, which is the kubeconfig flag, that it is not needed by the init workflow. So the case is I have a phase that has one additional flag, and the other case is, and from the other end is when invoking a phase, not all the flags are meaningful. So we can choose to hide some flag for phases.
That gets a little, for some phases, that gets a little weird from a user perspective. I'm trying to search in my brain really quick whether or not I know if there's precedent for that behavior. It's better to almost not have it as, I hate this. It's better to almost not have it as a flag within phases and to have separate common code that adds the flag across the phases where it does apply, right? That is probably a more prudent approach than to have the flag in the top level subcommand and from a user's perspective, it's just confusing as all get out, right? The problem is like we have many phases, and if it applies to like 80%. So this is kind of the I knew this was coming. This is why I said like next week I want to do an audit. Because I've already come across this use case a couple of times in the past. And I know that with this work, as we percolated the subcommands when we first had that conversation, I knew that this was coming.
Yes. I like the idea that we are removing flags from the phases, because this is cleaning up a lot of the code.
You can always have flag addition as a common feature or external, right? Like you have a set of flags that propagate into structures, right?
Yes.
And those are just a common library, and then they add the flags as part of your, you say add flag or add flags.
Yes, what I was prototyping, but today wasn't a messy day, is to allow each phase to specify what flags are relevant. So
I'm not, this is a little less important than I think than the actual, it's important, but I think it's a little less important than finishing the shuffling work and any other API changes that are still outstanding.
okay.
Yeah, one of the problems is that I think these kubeconfig flags are mandatory for some of the phases to work.
Yes, but I will split my fix to the phase runner in two parts. The first part is an easy one that allow to add a flag to phases.
Yeah, by exposing the command that the phase creates, or something like that.
Yeah, I'm prototyping, and I have one or two options, and then I will send a PR, and then we will discuss on this. But I'm quite sure that we will manage to get this fixed before the phases that needed these are merging. So
Yes.
We have time.
I don't have any other items, I think, for now, for this cycle, because I want to keep it related to 113, because we are starting to trek towards that milestone.
I have one thing that I would like, so that there are some new contributors that are helping us in doing phases and other refactor that we are doing.
Mm-hmm.
I would like to thank them and ask them to speak at this meeting, because it is important to hear the impression and have other opinion.
Hey, everybody. I've been trying to get started on this, but I would like to join the meeting where we go through these bugs, if that's okay. See what's out there. If you post that link somewhere.
I'm going to put it in standard SIG cluster lifecycle Slack channel once after we've done the cluster API meeting.
Okay, perfect.
Just wanted to thank you for all the help during the pull requests.
So you both work for SUSE?
Yes.
Yep.
We also have Iago, who has been helping us. Iago, do you also work for SUSE?
Hi.
Hi, I was asking if you also work for SUSE.
No, I work at a Brazilian company that is not
Ah, okay. Thanks for all the work on the phase PRs.
thanks.
Just with regards to new folks kind of joining, if you are interested, if you haven't signed up already, there is a contributor summit, but there's currently a wait list. I'm sure there will probably be folks who want to attend. But for KubeCon North America, which is going to be in Seattle in a month, a little over a month, there's a contributor summit before the actual conference. You should have probably done a PSA about this a little earlier, because you'd have to be added to the wait list, but you can get on that wait list to try and be there. And we will have separate sessions at KubeCon too as well, where we'd be happy to sit down and chat with new folks too, and sort of get some face-to-face time and discuss issues that are there and kind of roadmap items.
Oh, nice.
I will-
I will be at KubeCon too.
I will actually be there. So I will try to get on that wait list.
Yeah, I'm on the wait list too.
Something else I wanted to ask from folks is that I'm one of the few people who like front-wind the kubeadm issue tracker, and we daily get some reports from users like having issues with setting up a cluster using kubeadm. So I wanted to ask this group if you have free time, like check the tracker from time to time and respond to users if they have any problems. That's what I do every day, but I definitely need help with this.
Okay.
Thank you.
What might be beneficial too, I'm a big fan of it. We're kind of getting off of the 113 train, which is fine. I was kind of done, and I figured we'll talk about it later. An ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure. And what I often find is that I keep repeating myself. And like over the course of X years that I've worked on this stuff, I repeat myself maybe like 1,000 times. So I don't really have a good solution for this yet, or I haven't really thought of a good solution. But having sort of like a set of webcasts that basically literally walk through the documentation in full gory detail, it helps a lot, because it gives folks a point where they can actually pause and make sure that they're following things step by step. Because I've often find that we have documentation and we've done a really good job of vetting it, and we've gotten a lot of great feedback that we've updated that documentation recently within the last couple of releases to make it sure that it's up to date, but people don't always follow it. In fact, a lot of times they don't even know it's there. So that has always been a problem. So they just kind of YOLO. They got a tool, they just heard about it and just go. So if folks have like a sort of onboarding thing, or maybe wanted to even have like a web session that gets recorded, that's basically like, here's your onboard to kubeadm, and just kind of I can even talk with George about setting up like a community session about it, where folks can just walk through it. I think that would be helpful to folks who want to get more involved in the community. It doesn't have to be me. I don't want it to be me. Too busy. And it would also help to sort of answer a bunch of the common questions that kind of just get repeated over and over and over to ad nauseum.
So I think Dr. Stefan from API Machinery did a session explaining the kubeadm, the Kubernetes tree, like the whole repository, how is it structured. And that was part of a Contribex session, I think. So we can do the same like for kubeadm. I think George is someone to talk to about this.
Does somebody want to take like point on helping to orchestrate this? I can tie all the people together, but I've got enough meetings to basically mean now if I die tomorrow, I'll be in meetings. So it's this, if somebody else wants to take point on this, who's new to this space, I'm happy to.
But I didn't understand if we are if we are targeting new contributors or if we are targeting users of KubeAdmin.
I think a little bit of both.
My suggestion would be to get this after 1:13 because the schedule is kind of tight for us this cycle.
Maybe in the lead up to KubeCon, because there will be some weird end of cycle lull where myself, Fabrizio, and Lubomir will probably be on the critical path, but everyone else will be like, let's work on 114 stuff. That'd be a good time.
I don't mind helping out.
I guess we can decide on this like towards the end of the cycle.
Yeah, assuming there's no like bugs and stuff that come up.
Yes.
I think that we can eventually also start small, just asking in the KubeAdmin channel if people are interested in some workshop on specific topics.
How does this sound? Mirek, do you want to sort of do kind of a PSA and try to gain feedback, and we can reconvene next week and discuss if there's common Q&A questions we want to have, or how we want to approach this next week?
Absolutely, that sounds great.
We can also use one of those like quiz type tools where you can basically ask for feedback, like list your top 10 questions for KubeADM maintainers and stuff like that. But I'm not very familiar with the tools that they use.
Okay.
Yeah, survey was the exact word. Thank you.
Do we have a place to dump these, or like, I know we have this KubeADM office hours. Do you want me just to start a new doc, a new Google Doc, or if I'm taking notes on stuff that people say?
You could probably just have it like open an issue and just refine on that issue itself, because what will probably happen, the top 10 questions should be part of the docs, right?
Okay. Okay, yeah, so just do it in the KubeADM issue.
Yep, it seems fine to me. I mean, if you want to start with a doc, by all means, whatever works best. I'm just thinking that having an issue will like list down what are the docs changes we need to do.
Okay, no, that sounds good. Yeah, I just wanted to make sure I had it someplace where people could see and get to.
Are there any other topics that folks would like to discuss? Or do we get 15 minutes back? So going once? Twice? 3 times? Okay, thanks everyone.
Goodbye all.
If you have items that you want reviewed, you know, today's I'm unblocked, so I'm gonna free up my backlog. So let me know. Take care.